What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. This is the spoiler-heavy review of the new DC film, The Flash. And I'm excited that you're joining me here today. If you're brand new to the channel and never been here before, do me a favor. Hit that button. Show a little. Trying to get to 100,000. Appreciate it. Appreciate you being here. Really appreciate you being here. And before we even move on to anything else as we get into this thing, wanted to let you guys also know that I'm very excited about this one. I'm executive producing Katie Sackhoff's podcast, Blah, 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 with Katie Sackhoff. You can find that show on her YouTube channel. So if you haven't already subscribed, please do it. We're going to be doing a lot of great things over there. Deep dive conversations with Katie and myself, but also big interviews, big interviews, big guests. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you check that out. All right, let's get into this thing. I want to say that I'm surprised of the reaction this movie is getting. And I guess partially I am and partially I'm not. Like, I knew that there's a lot of controversy and all that. I don't want to get into that. We've gotten into that a million times over. We know that already. Covered it in the non-spoiler, covered it on other shows. So if you want to see us talk about it, there's tons of that. But more so is I thought that the audience that said, okay, I'm going to separate it. I'm just going to go and watch it. I thought a majority of people would be like, yeah, it was a good movie. A lot of people have problems with this movie. A lot of people have problems. I think I'll get into the stuff that I think that right away for me that didn't play was the CGI. There's some really questionable CGI for sure. And I don't want to give the standard old video game-esque, but I think there's some times that it just looks, it's so jarring. It does. I saw a couple references to this, whether it's Scorpion King or it seems in 2023, some of the way that the CGI is in this particular movie shouldn't be, right? A perfect example is like in the very beginning, I like the scene there. I saw some people saying it was cheesy. I actually like the scene where the Flash is hungry. He's got to get to where he's got to go. He gets there, and all he's got to eat first. So even though the babies are flying out of the window, here he comes. He's got to save them. No, he's not saving them first. He's going to get something to eat first. Then he's got to save all the babies. And I thought it was such a creative way in how they did it. The only thing that kind of took me out of it was how bad the CGI was. The dog looked terrible. The babies looked terrible. And by terrible, I mean just like so noticeable. Like it's something that happens inside your brain, right? When you're watching, it just says, well, that's obviously not real. I'm sucked out. And I had put myself in suspended disbelief for a second that I was watching this guy run as fast as he can, and in this kind of meta-human, I believe it. Oh wait, CGI baby, I'm watching a movie, but then I got over it because there was what was happening was what sucked me back in, and that was this great tie-in or conclusion, I think, to the Zack Snyder DC EU of watching these heroes that would not only Ben Affleck as Batman and Gal Gadot showing up. Henry Cavill, I assume, maybe was supposed to show up at this point, or maybe he was supposed to show up later on down the line with in the multiverse angle with Sasha Calle. I don't know, but nonetheless, there were some great moments here because after and on the phone with Jeremy Irons, Alfred, and all that, I thought it was a great inclusion of it to say like, hey, this is part of it. You know, I didn't love the humor with the barista, like all that. I love the way that Ezra Miller played this. I really do. I think that Ezra Miller did a great job in portraying both the Barry that we knew from the Snyder Cut and this Flash in general, Batman v Superman extended cut, all that stuff, and then also playing a version of the 18-year-old Barry. And I believe that the way that Miller played it was way more believable than, say, when in the last Shazam, where I felt that Zachary Levi was supposed to be playing an 18, 19-year-old and felt like it was a 12-year-old. So I believed it. And it was the emotional story of when Barry lost his mom and showing that and that idea that he can see it and having this. Ron Livingston takes over the role for Billy Crudup as his father. And I actually like the casting choice. I like Billy Crudup a lot, but couldn't do it, scheduling conflicts and whatnot. But he is now burdened with this. He's lost both his parents, and then he has to try to figure out what he can do. He's got these powers, and he doesn't realize he jumped back in a time, and he's, I can do this. I can change stuff different than how I did it last time, but I can change stuff. And I went back yesterday, and I see the baby stuff, and I saw that stuff, and let me try again. So he does, And what we see is we see the Barry that we reveal at the end that he ultimately created pushes him into the time period that he needs to get into in order for him to be created, in order for this whole thing to happen, which is when you go back and you look at it, the way that the multiverse plays and the way that Michael Keaton kind of explains it, it all makes sense and how it was supposed to happen and ultimately does. As he's going through now, the CGI portion, by the way, I will say, as much as I had that problem with it in the beginning, I think that when he's going through like the timelines, and I think you see Henry Cavill for a second throwing back to the, I think is it Batman vs Superman or is it Snyder? I think it's the Snyder cut of Justice League. I think that's what it was. Where you go with his shirt off, and they when they showed that CGI, I think it actually worked for that particular. It's almost like it was supposed to be like a game, almost like you could see. Wait, I need to get to that portion of time. I thought it worked well there, but it again, the emotional attachment was what I liked about this. It was Barry's attachment and the way that Bruce was formed into Batman from the loss of his parents. Barry has this connection, and they have a great moment with both himself and Bruce. And Bruce is telling him, you could screw up everything if you go back, so maybe you shouldn't do that. And he doesn't listen. He goes back, takes the tomato can, puts it in his mom's purse. She doesn't forget it, doesn't die, and the whole new line is created. And I thought that was very creative, and I thought that the way that they did it worked, and there was a good moment between the two of them, both Barrys. And then the idea I got to give you your powers. Now, I think that they needed to get Barry to not have powers, so he gets electrocuted again. And what happens? It's like a whole different person, just like that, out of nowhere, a new person, because he doesn't have powers anymore. And I understood the need for it because it was him trying to, because if he's got the powers, and then the idea that the 18-year-old has to be the one who's learning how to do it, and Barry's the 18-year-old zips through the street and he's laughing like an imbecile, and he's learning the rules, and this is a different Barry, right? This is the Barry that was spoiled. This is the Barry that didn't have the pain. This is the Barry that's so happy-go-lucky with this. This is a different Barry who's got these powers. And the Barry we know is like sitting there in the apartment waiting for this kid to listen to him, and he's phasing through the floor, and he's showing his Johnson to people by accident, and he's running around, and he comes back up, and it's like, I'm hungry and I pass out again. So it just played like that 18-year-old thing. But my favorite scene is actually when he goes to find out that Batman is still alive. But in doing it, it's they play with the multiverse, and they play with the humor of the Back to the Future, the Eric Stoltz stuff, and how different the roommates are, and the whole conversation with Eric Stoltz, and then leading into Barry realizing that the metahumans don't exist anymore because of what he did. And he's not really understanding the rules of how this all happened, and how this timeline was so jarred because of the choice that he made, and where he wound up going, right? So the idea at the very end when he's just like, Batman, is, oh, Batman exists, no one just knows who he is. And then that obviously leads into the Keaton of it all. And once that starts, you're going there. A lot of people are going there to see Keaton. And I thought it was a great way to introduce him when they go in. And I got the nostalgia feel to it when they walk into the Tim Burton Batman house, and when we saw the car eventually. But when you go into the house and you see the samurai stuff from the first movie, and when he's walking through, and it's just, I don't know. I was looking around going, oh, I remember that when he had the fundraiser and we first saw Vicky Vale, and I was kind of geeking out in my own way. But then they get into the kitchen and it's all a mess. And when they see, again, the 18-year-old Barry, who is learning his powers, is able to still maneuver away from a normal guy, especially Batman, but he's kicking powerless Barry. He's kicking his ass, to show how tough Batman still is. And then just that scene and the introduction of the multiverse through spaghetti. Well, it's not how time works. It's kind of like, if you're looking at it. And just the way that he was talking to them, and just how naive young Barry was. I thought this was the cousin's dinner, or cousin's lunch. I thought this was this. That's not Batman. So what the hell do you think we're doing here? And then we're not going to, you're going to help us? Pass. And he takes off. And then we get into the Batcave, and then we start to get more into what they need to do and figure they need to find Superman, so they think, and it's not Superman, it's Supergirl. They go into that whole scene where finally Batman decides to join them. I thought all of that played really well. And again, there were some times, this one less than the others, when Batman was zipping around and looked a little CGI-ish, but that way better than the other CGI problems that I had. But again, the biggest criticism I think of this film is the CGI. It was sometimes, and especially like when Supergirl comes out, who I thought tell me how to pronounce her name, because I said when I first introduced, first time I reviewed it, I said Sasha Calle, and everybody killed me for that. And then I said Sasha Calle, and people were, yeah, that's how you pronounce it. And people are telling me it's not. I want to pronounce her name right. She deserves it. She's really good in this role. My only issue with her, I have no issue with her. My only issue with the character is the writing you don't get enough of her. I guess it's a 2 hour and 20 minute movie or whatever it is. They give a lot of time to Batman, obviously. They give a lot of time to the Flash, and I think because of it, they give her what they can. But I just think that she could have done so much more because she was really good in the role. I thought she did a good job. And so you have her where she's like emancipated, and they go there and they're and I love the idea that Barry because Bruce is like, it's not him. Let's get the hell out of here. And Barry saves her, and she even says it's that whole realization of, because this is a different Kryptonian than the Clark that we know. Clark was raised in a good environment and was taught about humanity. She wasn't. She was studied and tortured, and she's had just a miserable life. So she's jaded. So when she finally realizes at the end, or close to the end, of Barry's, well, why'd you help me? Because you needed help. And so that kind of that changes it. That changes the whole thing, and it's a great team. So I liked it was the development up until the main ending where they're all fighting Zod and everyone else too, which as a superhero grand scale fight, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I did think it took away from the emotional story that they were telling with Barry and his mom, and the idea that, because even young Barry, who was listening in, knowing, no, we're going to save her, we're going to find a way. It starts to, you see how he transforms into the evil Flash at the end. But they needed to have, it's one of the things that the criticisms I always have a lot of comic book movies these days is that they feel that the audience always wants that, right? And they might not be wrong, but they always feel like, okay, let's get some story, let's develop some characters, and then big, huge action piece. If we can fit the emotional part of it into it, sure. And it's in there. It's in there. Like when Barry is older Barry's telling younger Barry, hey, this ain't working. It's just not working. It was, that part of it hit for me when Bruce craps out the first time they go back and they save him. Again, they're still messing with time every time they do it. They can't save Kara every single time they go back. She just keeps getting, it was supposed to happen. So the lead up into that, it's just, again, I think maybe it's just the CGI again a couple different times was jarring, but the fight itself, it worked. And then you get to the very end of it where I think that this is where the CGI bothered me the most, right? Because the idea of all these different universes opening up and seeing all these different Supermen and Flash was great. I love that moment. It made me go, why aren't they using deepfake? And again, I don't know the answer to this question, is if it's way too expensive or they wanted to do de-aging or whatever the technology is that they use, because it was great to see Christopher Reeve and Helen Slater. It was amazing to see, George Reeves. It was amazing to see all of Nicolas Cage, everyone that popped up. It was great to see all that, but all of it looked like a cartoon. Like, not once did I say, well, that one looked really good. Like, it all looked like a cartoon. And they shot with Nicolas Cage, from what I heard too. So it's like, why didn't they? I don't know why. I would love to find out the question of why they choose. A lot of times they choose de-aging over deepfake. I gotta assume it's the expense. I mean, that's what I guess. I always use the example of Mark Hamill from the season finale of Mandalorian season 2, as opposed to the Boba Fett one, which is the deepfake one, which looked no one will argue that how much better that looked. So I gotta talk to someone about that. Like, I just want to see what it is, and maybe people who are watching this, a lot of times we have people who are in that industry and can tell us. But the reasoning behind it made a lot of sense of what they did. And he said, "This is not changing everything. We're just causing a rift. We gotta." And it's ultimately younger Barry who sacrifices himself to the older Barry and eliminates himself from doing it. And then Barry realizes he's got to go and he's got to figure it. He's got to do what he's got to do. So he goes back and he has this great conversation with his mom. It was probably my favorite moment in the movie. It's a really emotional conversation, and the performances are just spot on from both. And it's just like the slow motion of how he first watches himself put the can back in there, but then realizes that this is how he's got to do it. He has one last conversation with his mom, gives her a hug, says goodbye, has that tear moment. It was a really emotional, solid moment. But I think the most emotional moment for sure. And even when Barry walks in the first time and sees his mom after not seeing her for so many years and sitting down and eating with his family and having that moment, there were like a lot of good emotional moments there. And then to couple that with the idea that he comes up with the idea to save his dad, and it's like, okay, maybe the same world events won't happen if I do that, and they don't, but they do cause a rift. And I think it was a clever way for them to say, all right, this is now an Elseworlds thing because Barry's going to stay here, as you find out in that reveal with Aquaman. This is a alternate universe, and Aquaman is the same everywhere. Hence, that's probably how they're going to explain if they want to make Aquaman 2 an Elseworlds movie, they can do it. And then the first way you find that out is as the car pulls up, out comes Batman, but it's not. It's George Clooney. Now, when I saw this at CinemaCon, here's the interesting thing. I saw this at CinemaCon, and they showed no one. They just said, "Who's that?" And then it was nothing. It cut off. So I figured they were going to show somebody eventually because I saw it with somebody who had seen the movie 2 weeks prior to the CinemaCon thing. And they told me that was a very different scene. In the scene that I saw, Robert Pattinson was in there. And I heard that from a bunch of different people, that Robert Pattinson was in there. Then I heard that Michael Keaton was in there also. I thought it would be very interesting if they just kept releasing cuts of the movie throughout the country that had those different scenes in there because it played into the different Batman, but apparently everyone is seeing the Clooney one. But it makes sense that now that's how they're going to play it. Now, the movie, as of today, when I'm recording this, it's made like $60 million opening weekend, so it's not doing great. So a sequel probably isn't in the works because Andy Muschietti now is going to be working on Batman, Robin, or what's it, Brave and the Bold? That doesn't sound right. That Brave and the Bold is that right? What is it? That's a soap opera, isn't it? I don't know. You tell me. I don't remember. So this is the movie itself, though. I did enjoy it. I see it so many different mixed views or mixed reviews rather. And I will say this: I think that there are some people who are legitimately criticizing the movie and saying, I didn't like this movie. And I've seen a lot of the major review and criticism of legit criticisms of the film have been the CGI. I've seen that like from tons of people that I know, is that it was too jarring. It looks so bad. Double Toasted, who we're doing an event with, by the way, on this Friday, I saw them, and both Corey and Martin were talking about how bad the CGI looked. Like this laughably bad. We're going to talk about that in New York, I'm sure, as well. So you can get tickets. And you can live stream it too, thekristianharloff.com. And they're not the only ones. I've seen tons of people talking about that. But I also seen tons of people that I was curious about their opinions on it, like Mike Kalinowski, who's a big DC fan, who loved it. And the return of Keaton and the way they played, I really enjoyed the movie. I stand by it. I think it's a really fun movie. It's enjoyable. Liked it. I think it's one of the better DCE movies. And I wonder, though, like I said, I saw a lot of legit criticisms. And then I got a text from somebody who yesterday was like, I saw The Flash, really good movie, really hard for me to get past the Ezra stuff. Judged the movie as it was, but just hard for me to get past the Ezra stuff. So it's just a weird thing where they're at right now. I'm so curious to how this movie is going to do overall. I do think it's a solid film. I'm very curious to what you guys think overall. We're going to dive a little deeper, you'll see on Monday's episode with myself and Coy and Winston. We talk about this movie for like 55 minutes. So you guys can join us over there and lend your thoughts. I just wanted to give my quick thoughts here. I had 2 versions of myself telling you the review today. I hope that you enjoy the review. And please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Help us out, man. Get us to 100,000. And like I said, this Friday, if you can't be there in person, you can get the tickets to see it live, thekristianharloff.com. Thanks for joining me on the show today. I appreciate you. We'll see you on the flip side.